Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I know what that's like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm at the point, because I have 4 kids. I, it's most important for me to be a mom first and then a student. So if I'm to work, it takes away from me being a mom.
Yeah.
So I would rather not.
Okay. And what are there any causes or passions you're behind? Any other ones?
Mostly youth. I opened up my first corporation in 2011, and it was a for-profit, but it dealt with coaching at-risk women. And I worked at that for quite a while, and then through that corporation opened up a not-for-profit, and I opened up a transitional house for at-risk women and their children.
Okay.
I did that until 2015, and then I burned out. And I realized I really wasn't trained to protect myself in the process, right? There's a lot of emotional, I really take on other people's emotions. I wasn't trained to release them again. I was going to go to school and do that, but then I realized when I burnt out working with women, it kind of made me slightly jaded. And I didn't want to be. Because I don't feel that way, but I react differently than how I used to. So one thing, and I find society at large, if it's an at-risk youth, they're more comprehending. At-risk women, it's like you have to convince them they're not insane. I've heard every single description of at-risk women, and it's not nice. So I thought, I still want to help them. I can help them by helping their children.
Just so you know, Scott will be just coming in to turn up your volume at the back, so don't pay any attention to him, and just so it doesn't alarm you. So from time to time, he may be doing that if he needs to adjust the volume behind it. Just so I should give you a heads up.
Good morning, Scott.
Okay, great. So at-risk women. Okay, so that's all very interesting, and I'd love to hear more about it after on, if and when you come back for passion projects like that, all you can obviously talk about on that show. So anything you mentioned up until now with your passion, what you're doing, what you're studying, because that's related to your career, passion, causes, we don't indirectly or directly talk about on 1111. And then, like I said, of course, it's about having uncommon conversations that aren't natural. Now, naturally, because there's no agenda, if the question comes up naturally, then I'm really just curious, but there was no agenda or intention that I'm going to ask you that question. It just comes up. At times, we may do that, right? That just uncommonly will come up. That may be related to you being a mom, even though you mentioned it, because I am generally curious about it, and that's uncommon. But just, being conscious of that. And why I say that, because I've had experience where, you just get better at explaining it. Like, even though you say no promoting, no selling, no talking about your business, how you make money, your passion, your causes, but I've had coaches, like people who are coaches in their career, and indirectly my very, very first 1111 became a coaching session on me, right? So from then I learned, and it was my responsibility to just make the format and the process. It all worked out after clear, right? So also, we just say no coaching, no giving advice on 1111. It's just a conversation that we normally would not have, because it's so natural and common to talk about what we do, share our story, why we do what we do, what we're passionate about. It's really common to talk about that. So if we feel uncomfortable or awkward, then that means we're on the right track. And it's okay just to say that, because there are times I've said, I don't know what to say now. I'm kind of, and that's okay, because that's being real, right? So, and at times, people's stories have come out in conversations, as long as, like I said, they didn't come here with the intention of sharing their story or the agenda of sharing their story, because that's also can be indirectly promoting their story. Now, like I said, again, for Passion Projects Light, you can do any of that. or
Sure.
all of, whatever you want to talk about, which I know it's a long way, but I hope you do come to and take advantage of that, because it's offered to all my guests of 1111 and as a way of saying thank you for coming, and just knowing that you can promote yourself, can talk about what you do, but it's just like an uncommon, unnatural, raw, pure conversation. So from that, you can do that.
So what was it online that made you sort of step forward and say, would you like to come on 1111?
For you?
Yeah.
Well, honestly, I don't remember, but Scott actually, because he created 1111 for me, he created it for me out of a very desperate situation of me. I don't want to get much into my story today, but there's a whole story behind it that I've been sharing out there. I don't know if you've watched
I've seen some
videos.
of it,
yeah, where I had to walk away from my employment out of years of harassment, slave labor hours, and I just became really depressed and felt helpless. And I shared with him one morning that I just wanted to not live anymore, or I wanted to end my life. So that's how we came up with the concept of 1111, where I can connect with people, right? And that's a very shorter version of the story. It actually saved my life, where I look forward to each morning. I look forward to you coming today. I'm glad you're here. Like even this morning, I was sad, depressed, negative until you showed up. So that was the whole purpose for it so I don't wake up with just, in my head or negative thoughts, that those thoughts are preoccupied, and it actually sets the tone of my day.
That's good.
So and that's like, I'm giving you a very short version, but can I just ask, like, what had you say yes to 1111? And Scott, I know, reached out as well, because he created this for me, so he's been helping me get people as well.
I think more curiosity. After you invited me, I went and I took a look, and I watched a couple conversations, and then conversations you and Scott had, and I just thought, you've got a way of reaching out that's very calm, and it's very, I don't know if this is the right word, but it's very loving, and it's like loving of humanity type thing. It's a natural curiosity, and so I thought, wow, that'd be kind of interesting to talk to her.
Thank you. Yeah.
So that's about it. That's about the only reason. But I do this a lot, though. I get because of different things that I do, I get a lot of people that just want to sit down and talk. Because I am a single mom, because I've been 14 years on my own and raising all the kids on my own and going back to school. And I really do, I try and connect with people all the time too, because it is very difficult not to get that sadness when you wake up. And probably that's a lot of how I do. I go out, I call it city hiking. And I throw a backpack on, I have my hiking boots on, and I go out and I just introduce myself to the most random person and sit there and have a conversation, because they're cool. Their whole life experience is always going to be so different from mine. And I get to experience a version of someone else's life just by sitting there talking to them for a bit. And it's usually people nobody wants to talk to. But I enjoy it. I enjoy it very much. So, yeah.
Yeah, I really acknowledge you, because you came all the way from Scarborough, right? And that's far. And I have some relatives that stay in Scarborough, and I mean, the further, I think, side of Scarborough, but it's like taking the bus here. I can't imagine. I don't know how long it took you.
It wasn't too bad. I drove.
Oh, you drove?
I did drive, yeah.
All right, good. Okay, good. Yeah, that's what I think I had a feeling. So I'm just going to send you a text just in case things change and you decide to drive here, you know, just where to park and all that, just in case, I guess. My senses were right.
Yeah. Well, I was hoping my daughter wouldn't need the car, and so she doesn't work until later this afternoon. So it's okay.
How old are your kids?
My oldest she'll be 24 shortly. Then I have 2 girls, 2 boys, and then I have a boy that's 22, and a girl that's turning 20 shortly, and then a boy that's 16.
Oh, when you said like kids, I thought they were like young kids.
Yeah, no, they all moved to Toronto with me, so I could go back to school so that they could help me get back to school. And
do they stay with you as well?
Yeah, they live with me, and it's a little crowded. We're used to having like either big farmhouse, or I had a beautiful Victorian house where we came from, and so we're not quite used to being squished in, but we all get along very well. We've always been very much a team, so we have our moments. There's always the balcony to go and cool out.
Is it a house you live in?
It's a condo.
Oh, a condo.
Yeah, so like a high rise with like this. Our view's like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, it's nice. I don't mind it. I don't mind the neighborhood. It's very different for us, coming from a small city to Scarborough. But we've adapted.
Yeah.
And so, what kind of is your background? Like to come forward and be able to do this?
Background, do you mean education-wise or where I came from? Sometimes if people ask me background, I'm not sure, like, what exactly they want to know. So I just thought, instead of assuming, I'll just ask, do you mean, like,
I guess it's kind of a mix. I see education as experience as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, my background educationally is social work. Studied social work at Ryerson University.
Nice.
And then I went into going into counseling. Took a whole certificate program there, and a lot of my experience with my field has come through my work.
Mm-hmm.
The place where I worked had all this harassment and leaving slave-labor hours, where I was a grief counselor for 6 years. Loved my job in terms of what I did, supporting my clients. Loved that part of it. But I was at a hospice. So I worked there for 6 years, and just, when I just resigned as of March 1st because everything that was going on, it was affecting me physically, mentally, psychologically. I had to seek psychiatric care, and still in between sessions because my appointments with my psychotherapist just started because there was a huge waiting list.
Mm-hmm.
So, and here's 11:11.
Yes.
So in a nutshell, that's my background. And again, like now I'm just redefining myself. Like I don't know exactly who I'm supposed to be, what I am. I thought I was a social worker with a degree, and I had it all planned out that I'm going to next go for my master's, maybe my PhD down the road. And then this all came into play, and it just interrupted everything. And now it's like, I don't even know if I want to do that anymore. I don't think I do.
Yeah.
So I'm just really, right now, I'm just looking at what I'm following is what guidance from God. So I pray, like, God, just guide me towards what you want me to do.
For sure.
Right?
Oh, that's
take
good.
it moment by moment.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the best. Yeah, you can't follow a definition that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
You have to go and do your own thing. Good for you.
Yeah, thank you. And I never even thought, because I was this professional and just so dead on and so serious about my work.
Mm-hmm.
Like really attached to my credentials and my career and my, but now it's like, it's different. It's like, I don't want to say I'm a different person, but I can't believe how much things have changed. And through my journey and experience with what I've been through now, taking this huge stand, going up against a charity, like speaking of what you said, not going into, I know it's not promoting or anything with you, but I'm just naturally bringing it up, as you had mentioned before with you, what your thing was with women and at risk and taking that stand.
Mm-hmm.
With me, I've never taken a big stand like this before.
Mm-hmm.
It was a bigger purpose I felt that went beyond myself, is fighting for those oppressed employees. that were left destitute as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. I think that's what turns us is, and I was like that before I was on my own. I was afraid to do anything ever. And I was a stay-at-home mom for 20 years. And I kept knowing I wanted to do something, but I couldn't find it in me to do it. And then when I was on my own and, I became at risk, I stood up and I went, wait a minute. I'm lucky that I've been raised in this beautiful family and I have this structure to bring forward into my new life. But a lot of the women that I talked to did not. So I tried to help them find their own structure. And you really, I don't want to call it a power, but you get this inside drive. And all of a sudden, you just blossom. But it's been 14 years for me learning how to do this.
Yeah.
So, I understand completely. But I never felt there was a rush. I always felt I could just take my time and take every day and go with it. Yeah.
With me, I think now so I've mellowed out. But with me, when it first happened, it was a rush. I need to do it now. But as you were talking, I wouldn't have done it. It was just honestly for me. Because, Scott's my mentor for 3 years. He's been getting me to speak up, stand up for myself, and I never did. But when it became about, because 2 employees got fired before I left for just standing up for their rights and refusing to work the extra unpaid hours.
Right.
And they got terminated. And then I said, okay, and there are other employees in there too that the same. So Scott actually, what about other people? If you stay silent and don't do anything and continue working like this, you're participating in other people's abuse and being taken advantage of as well. And that's something that hit my conscience.
Of course.
I couldn't continue to live with, because I would go against my, I don't know what everyone would call it, integrity or whatever, taking a higher stand. That's what made me stand up.
Good.
I don't know if you saw, it's on Facebook. Recently found out I won my case.
Good for you. Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah,
congratulations.
I did win, where the ministry awarded me over $30,000 because of Scott's work. And these, for this charity to pay me, and it was huge because this popular charity.
Yeah.
And that was, it was, again, it's a journey, right? But that vindication, that victory, it's more than just the money, it's what it means.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? And now other people can have permission. Because it's really hard. You've probably experienced it yourself. I don't know. It's really hard going up against an organization, standing up, and it being just you. Yeah, I had Scott with me, but we're not lawyers. I couldn't afford a lawyer. I didn't have the resources they did. They had the top law firm, whatever, investigators, and it was just me against 10, 11, an army of 11 or whatever, right?
Wow.
And truly, it was actually Scott against them. At the end, the truth prevailed. Because he ghostwrote everything for me and acted as my lawyer with his background, even though he's not a lawyer, but he has a lot of experience with legalities and through his own businesses, right?
Yeah.
So I was just in trauma and in shock the whole time.
Of course.
While he was writing those letters, and I just, I was afraid, and I was attached to my career. But now it's like, okay, God, what do you want me to do? I need to break that attachment. What does that piece of paper mean anymore? You know what I mean?
It's like, what can I learn from it, and how can I apply what I learned to what's going to happen next, or what's happening now?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so how about you? Is there anything you want to talk about, whether through your experience or...
One thing I always like doing, and I don't know if this would be considered promoting, because I don't actually, other than, using myself as an example, I want more single women to go back to school. Like, education is so important. And I don't work in that regard, and I don't even study in that regard. But when I look around at the world and I see people who are struggling so hard, a lot of them have no education or very little.
Yeah.
So that's always been my thing is, I don't know, education is so important. And I go through this with my kids too.
And I don't think, like you say, you don't know if this is promoting. I don't think it's promoting if you talk about why it's so important for you that these women have education. Like, why is it so important to you?
I think a lot of it's generational. I grew up in a family where girls grew up to get married. And I graduated high school when I was 16. And, my parents, as amazing as they are, girls could be a secretary until they got married. And I'm like, no, I want to be a fashion designer. And, there's a lot of women my age who, they kind of grew up the same. They were pigeonholed into, you're going to be a mom. And nothing against moms. I love being a mom. But there's so much more to us than just being a mom or just settling for a career that society tells you should have. So when I meet these different women, whether they've never had any education or they've had education and then put it away because that's what society would tell you to do in our generation, I want them to see that you can do it. You can actually still be a mom. You can go back to school. You just have to, it sounds kind of weird or aggressive, but you just have to go take it. It's your right to do it, and you have to go take it. But, a lot of women think that's too aggressive. And, like, I just did it. I apologized for it before I even said it. Whereas men, it's, no, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how I'm going to do it. So, that, to me, that's very important to really show women that I'm still a nice person. I've worked very hard to remain a nice person through all the trials I've been through in my life. And to now put aside so much so that I could have an education. I want women to see that. And I think it's, especially here in Canada, that should be a foregone conclusion. Just do it. But it's still not. Like, even a lot of the girls I go to school with, and York is very international, they still think that way.
So, yeah, as you were saying that, for me, I was raised, I always felt I stood up. I mean, my dad always wanted me to be independent. That's why he brought me here, so I can have a good education and go to university from East Africa, being a lower developed country, right? And he saw, like, there'll be no future for me when I grow up. So he came here when I was 6. But also just, I think the mindset is, just do your job. Yeah, my dad always would train me to stand up for myself, to speak up. But I was always timid. I was quiet. I felt invisible. And that's why through this journey standing up, you're right, the society, it's like it cripples you sometimes, right? Through my journey, like the whole system together. It's, I don't know, it was just really, for me, I had to have someone who really believed in me, and believed in the certainty that we can do this. Yeah. And we can do it as long as we're coming from love, and we can do it for other people out there, whether future employees, because this is not right. And if no one speaks up and it continues, and it's perpetuating, right? Or I could have said, I'm just going to walk away and leave it. But for me, it was just my low self-esteem that I wouldn't have quit. I would have just continued to be abused because I was abused victim. Yeah. Right? I would have continued to just work all those hours and be taken advantage of. But, as God stepped in, and if there was someone who believed in me and said, no, this is wrong. I'm going to fight for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
That's wonderful. I know for me it was my kids. They were very young. I think the youngest was 2 when we were first on our own. So like 2 to 10 years old. And I had to fight for them. I mean, we were abandoned. Somebody had to stand up and fight for them. And even though to this day, for what I've been through, I'm terrified to do certain things. Like I can't put garbage out. It's a really strange thing to say, but it was something of the 20 years of manipulation that I went through. I was terrified of putting garbage out, which is strange. I could take it to the dump, but I couldn't take it to the end of the driveway. So there's some things that will always continue with me. But like you're talking about having somebody who believes in you, my son would take my arm and walk me out to the road, and he would hold the garbage. And then, slowly, I would hold the garbage, but he would always walk me out there. And it's, he just knew somehow, naturally, that I needed this. I needed to get past this. Now, I can take it to the garbage chute now. It's totally different circumstances. But those are barriers, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Scott knew what would make a difference for me. He helped me through an eating disorder in the past, and he acted like my coach, my therapist. When my dad was diagnosed with cancer last summer, he's okay now. That was the last. And then I was too scared to go to my employer to let her know from what I've seen and with other employees and just intimidation. That's when he knew to step in and do that intervention with me, out of knowing me for 6 years, and just knowing like what it would do to my self-esteem if I did get fired or if I did get let go.
Oh, for sure.
People that say, you can go get another job, you got a degree, you do, but when you have that low self-esteem, when you're in your head, it just does not work. Yeah. So he knew this is what's going to work for me, like vindicate me. And he knew also I needed to win for me. And he knew it wasn't about the money. It was about something bigger.
Of course. And that's usually, I think that's where we learn to bloom, isn't it? Like, for me, that's, I've won a lot of the battles, but I still look at it as, when's the next one going to be? When's the next one? Because, the stigma of women and at-risk women and youth, there's always going to be another battle. And, I have to go home and really look at myself every single day and go, what did I do today? Was it good enough? And so I don't think I can say I have a low self-esteem, but it's a very broken self-esteem. And so I have that continuously every day as well. And I think even with every single battle that we win, it's still there. You still have to deal with it, but it's how you deal with it and what you do with it, right? And that's the way I, people think I'm like out there and, so, I must be aggressive or I must be, and I know I even intimidate some people, but I'm like, no, it's just me and I have to take care of me every day so that I can do what I have to do. Yeah.
But what had you, had your self-esteem broken? Like, what happened? It's okay if you don't answer that, by the way.
Oh, no, I'm very open. So when I met my ex-husband, I was 19 years old. I had just returned home from doing like volunteer work across Canada, and he made me a million promises. And the biggest one was I got to go to school to take fashion design. And so for the first few years, it was my first relationship ever. And so for the first few years, it was like he was there beside me. He was my partner. And things were going very well. There was some really strange hiccups, but nothing that would make you think strangely. And I always was very adamant because I was more, at 19, I was more like I am now than I was all those years in between. I was very adamant that if anybody ever abused me, I'd kick their ass. Excuse me, I would. So it took almost 20 years for him to break me. And
how did he do that specifically?
It was like, to give an example of a type of manipulation, I thought I was the most stupid person in the world. I was so terrified that people would see I was stupid that even when my father was in Kingston General Hospital and he was dying, I would drive outside of the Queen's campus in case anybody ever noticed I was there and they knew how stupid I was. Like, it was that type of mentality. But I had been convinced over all these years that I was so stupid. And yet I knew I wasn't. But it was that 20 years of manipulation that just slowly brings you down, down, down. Things like every neighbor hates you. That's why you can't take the garbage out. They're going to go through your garbage. They're going to find out something about you. There's nothing to find out, but of course, 20 years of that, right? So at the time, we lived way out in the middle of nowhere, and all 4 kids were born. And I remember we were renovating an old 184-year-old church into a house, and I was sitting out in the church area, and it had been extremely bad. And I'm a very visual person, and all the sunlight's coming in through the church windows, and I just looked up, and you know how dust kind of goes like this in the sunlight? Inside of the little dust particles, I could just see this sparkle going, and it was like I felt my whole soul was make a decision, either keep it or let it go, one or the other. And so I remember seeing this sparkle leaving my body, and I just picked up the phone and I phoned my mother. Now, I wasn't really allowed to see my parents or my family or anything like that, so I never had a support system while I was with him. And I phoned my mother and I said, so he's an alcoholic? And she said, yeah. I said, he's an abusive alcoholic? And she said, yeah, we kind of figured. And I said, I need help. And she says, well, you're his wife. You have to give him the opportunity to make it better, stand up to him. But you are a mother first. So you take care of your kids. And so I followed her instruction, and I tried for a really long time. But that type of manipulation, it's not like somebody raises a fist to you. It's little bits all along the way, right? Like when at one point I said to him, I said, it's my dream to go to university. He didn't want to work anymore, and we went from making a lot of money to very, very poor. And he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I think I'd be good in law. It's the way my brain thinks, and I had been writing case law for him. And he said, well, why don't you apply to Queen's? And I'm like, okay, I can do this. And so I applied to Queen's, and just as everything was coming together, I had said to him, you're going to have to stay home and take care of the kids, and I'm going to have to go to school and work and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, yeah, no problem. So he got drunk every day and every night, totally incapable of taking care of the kids at all. So yes, you're allowed to do it. He's never said no to me, but he made it impossible for me to do anything I wanted to do. Right? So it's a different type of abuse, a different type.
Wow.
Yeah. And it really breaks you. Physical abuse, yes, it's inside too. But the outside bruises heal, right? The other manipulative abuse is you really have to build yourself back to what you were or something else in order to come back from it. And nobody believes it because they can't see the scars. They can't see the evidence.
That's where I was at, and I'm still at.
Mm-hmm.
So you were talking exactly.
Yeah.
It was, that I was just so scarred and traumatized. Even had a doctor's note saying, about that I have every good reason to resign because of my anxiety. Actually, their exact words were, my anxiety disorder was caused by my employer. A doctor's note. And I felt like I wasn't believed, not by the public, but by, people.
Yeah.
And then they just kept on coming at me in different ways, building a case and I don't know what not, even though it was nothing. Like I didn't do anything, and then accusing me, even though it was just, and it was, abusive.
It is.
At one point, I had to change my phone number and delete all my email accounts so they couldn't contact me. They still found a way to contact me, right? So after I quit. You know, I thought I gave them what they wanted. I finally quit. But I didn't stop. It's like, and then Scott, because he knows me through experience, because his dad was an alcoholic, right? And he, when he was in an abusive, toxic home, his mom too was unhealthy. So he knows, and working with 100 addicts in the past, well over 100 addicts for free, he knew the patterns. These patterns, right? He said there are different kinds of abuse.
Yeah.
Right? And just when you said that, I'm like, yeah, that relates to them. I mean, they didn't they physically didn't push me or hit me or whatever. Obviously, they can't do that, you know. But other ways that have more of a longer lasting effect on you. And it's like you said, you felt like you had to rebuild yourself. That's where I am now. In fact, Scott told me before, because he knew what they were going to do, and they did exactly what he told me they were going to do. Last January, he begged me not to renew my license as a social worker, because that's the last straw they'll use, because they know once I win, they're gonna attack my standing with the social worker body. And that's what they did. And that's what came in the mail yesterday.
Oh, wow.
Even though I know it means nothing, but still, the fact that they did that, they tried, they planted stuff, because they knew that's what I was attached to, like, that's what's important to me. Right? So,
yeah. It's one of the things I found, because I try to be extremely open. I've done a lot of like public speaking and trying to explain to people, because I don't actually look the part of, you know, somebody who's been on welfare or any of these things. I don't look the part, so people assume I'm not. And so I would go out and I would talk with large groups of people. And believe me, I cried every single time, because I hate talking in front of people. I'm so shy. But I would do it, and at the very end, I would say, now I'm describing me. And they would be like, no. And I'm like, yes. You know, your next door neighbor, your mother-in-law, your sister could all be going through this. Nobody ever really knew with me. And, you know, really opened up their eyes. And so for that reason, I'm extremely open. I think people need to see that it's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. And I think that's really important. And the only problem with being really open is people who still want to target you. They will find those bits and pieces that mean the most to you, that you've worked the hardest on, and they'll play them against you. And I'm going through that right now. My landlord is a slumlord, and you know, he targeted me as a single mom, knowing or thinking I would be very vulnerable. And you know, I am vulnerable. I just don't sleep. I'm so stressed out. But it doesn't mean I'll stand down, whereas most single moms would when it comes to, like, you know, safe housing and stuff like that. So, but he completely went online, found out everything about me when I applied to move, like, to rent the condo. And it's been hell for 2 years fighting him off. Yeah. And that's discrimination, like complete discrimination. But it's, you know, that is so common here, discrimination against single mothers. So, you know, so now I have to be very open about that as well. And mind you, I will say I say less about that on Facebook, because I know he even has his legals going. Like, they've tried to produce evidence off of Facebook, and the judges just laugh at them. But, you know, but it's, but so I want to be open, but I have to be very careful what I'm open about, because anything you say can be used against you in a different way, very discriminatory, or, you know, so because they knew what was so important to you, they knew how to challenge it.
Yeah, they know my career, my license is everything to me, and I'm scared of losing it.
Of course.
Like, I'm terrified, right? So I don't know what to do. I'm sort of at a standstill. I'm attached to my license there as a social worker, and don't want to lose it.
No.
Right?
And it makes sense. You've earned it.
Yeah, it's what I worked so hard for, and yeah, they scared me.
Of course.
They scared me big time.
But that's their job.
But like an organization, I still don't wrapping my head around it.
Yeah. I don't know
if you'd understand a personal abuse,
Yeah.
But like an organization, someone who's supposed to be doing good in the community, if they treat their employees like they're a piece of...
But I know other organizations like that, and they don't act like that. So it's the people behind the organization, right? They are regulated, but at the same time, they will push their own agenda. And, people who fear for their job or people who are insecure themselves, they will do these types of things. Maybe not make it well known, but they will do them. And you can't wrap your head around that. That's a person with a different thought pattern, different thought process, different morality code. And I don't think I would want to wrap my head around it. I think I would want to pull back, look at my options, and, which is what I'm doing with my landlord, is I just cut communication, pull back, educate myself on what I can and can't do, and go from there.
How do you educate yourself?
Well, because I have written some case law and I have worked the Landlord-Tenant Act, really just reading a lot of that, and then getting free legal advice wherever I can. And, I'm at the point where there's so much I can have them charged with. But it's also about... I have an expression, life is a game of chess, right? And so it's also about being able to see how the different pawns are moving. And sometimes when you pull back, they make bad moves. And when they make bad moves, it piles up against them, and you get to see what type of person they really are. And so I had to do that to survive my marriage. So I was very well trained in that. So essentially that's, how I would do it, is just I would educate myself in whatever the issue was as much as I possibly could, know when I'm outside of my abilities. I know I'm at the end of my abilities with him right now. And so, now it's time to get legal help. So, yeah.
You said something very interesting, about when you pull back, the other side makes more mistakes.
Yeah.
What does that mean? I mean, I know what it means, but that was interesting.
It's really hard to do. So in my marriage, because he was an alcoholic, it would kind of build to do things. He wasn't like a constant alcoholic. I mean, he was an alcoholic, but some days he would be fine and he would be a great dad and he'd play with the kids and all that kind of stuff. But you never knew when it was going to switch. So you can't plan things, right? You have to just be ready for everything all the time. And so, he would go out to the Legion and get very drunk and then come home. And instead of at that point saying, you can't come in because you're drunk, I would just pull back, take the kids with me, do something, let him pass out, let him whatever he's got to do, but not allow the confrontation, not allow him to take it out on one of the kids or on me or anything. And so I learned that when I pull back, he becomes insecure because he's expecting the confrontation. And that's what people do in business. like I've negotiated all kinds of residential contracts, and sometimes you have to go back and let them think things through, right? So when it comes to something like abuse, all of a sudden you change the rules when you pull back, because they expect the conflict. They expect this is why they do it, right? And so when you pull back, you watch what they do. And so they're going to make more mistakes. They're either going to drink more, or they're going to, whatever it is they're going to do. And then you're able to see their patterns. And when you see their patterns, then you know when to say something, right? And so you build yourself up. You're not being torn down, because it's like putting up a wall, right? And then you go forward at the right time, when you know they're at their weakest, so that they're not going to retaliate at the level that they would have otherwise.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's not a fun thing.
No, I think I'm just, I don't know, I'm just terrified, scared, at my wit's end.
I think it's okay to be scared. I mean, I'm terrified of every day.
I'm terrified of what they're going to do next.
Yeah. You never know.
I know I'm innocent,
but that's the fear game, right?
Yeah.
And I think when I said to myself, it's okay to be scared. It's okay to be afraid of your own voice. It's okay to be afraid of what you look like. It's okay to be all those different types of things. Then I started stressing less against things, and I started seeing things. I still stress out horribly. I think it's my personality, but yeah, but that took a long time to be able to tell myself it's okay to be scared. It's a natural human reaction.
Yeah. Yeah, I've gone through my life with a lot of fear. Yeah, just being used to being bullied, stepped over, taken advantage of, not speaking up, not standing up, right?
Yeah.
So.
And then all of a sudden, you you have to change it.
Yeah, and just seeing the best in people.
Yeah.
Like, that's why it's like, and I've been through many things in my life, but never like this.
No.
Where people are vengeful against you just for standing up. Like, it's stuff you see in movies, right? It wasn't my life, like to that extent. So it was like, and I was just trying to understand this human behavior. Like, why? I don't I can not understand it, right? But because I don't wish harm on anyone, not even them, and it's like, sometimes I have doubts in my mind. Oh, they won't do this. No, or can they be that cruel? No, and then it happens.
Of course, yeah. But last year, I had to. I'm still technically married. He left and moved to Thailand, so we haven't seen him for 14 years. And last year, I was so mad at him. I was so angry. Like, I get a tiny little bit of support, and I would see all these women that weren't struggling, that the husbands participated with the children and did all these things and helped pay, so that they didn't have to struggle all the time. And then I just kind of went, like, I was never in love with him. It was always manipulation from the very beginning. But I just kind of went, I don't like what's inside of me right now. I've struggled so hard to just stay a nice person. I don't like the fear. I don't like the hatred. I don't like any of this. I don't show that to other people. Why would I give you my hatred? And so, I was just laying there one night and I went, I can say I love you because you're a human being. I don't like anything about you or what you did. But that put the power back in me rather than me releasing a hatred all the time. And now I have no fear of him. And things he tries to do, I'm like, whatever. those types of things, because he still tries the manipulation from the other side of the world. And, like messaging me and saying, I thought you would have called me to come home by now. 10 years later.
Yeah.
And then I have to come home to do my retirement, whatever they do for retirement. And, so maybe I'll see you. I'm like, the last thing I want is you on my doorstep. So it was like little bits of fear that I might have to encounter him. And now I'm like, whatever. You're just some other human being. And you can't control that in me, because I just love human beings in general. And I'm just going to put you with the general. So there is a power in that. And it's really hard to maintain it too. Because, I see what my kids go through from being abandoned, and that's never going to go away with them. It's always going to be something and always be a struggle. So, I'm the one who has to help them fix it. So why should I try and figure out what's he going to do next? How's he going to hurt us, right? Let's just say I'm my own person. I'm going to do my own thing. You're over there, It's harder in your case because they are attacking, your whole career. But yeah, and they're here. Yeah, there is geography does play into this very well for me, but
yeah. You think something's over and it's like something else shows up. And again, it's just, I guess I don't know what to say. Just dealing with it the best way I can.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Yeah. But it's all stages. You can't solve anything right away.
No. Yeah, and then, and I know it's not just me. There have been other people that have been intimidated by them.
Absolutely.
Terrified.
Yeah.
They tried to shut up by threatening them so they wouldn't go to the media or speak to others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or everybody get together and stand up against them. Everybody's too afraid to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, it's so brave to be able to stand up against them yourself. Even though you've got Scott, it's still you. And it's so brave. And these other people see this. You don't even have to put it in front of them. They will see it. It does happen. And you don't even have to realize it to know you're doing it. Like, I remember when I blog a lot, and at one point I'm very positive, and I just, because I was working with women all over the world just via the internet, and at one point I got really down. I thought, what am I doing? This is really hard to do, and be so positive all the time. And I was negative, not negative, but maybe sad. And this one person, it was a guy, he messages me and he says, look, I don't think you get it. People may not say something, but there are so many people that count on your words to wake up to every single morning to make sure they get through that morning. And, they need that injection of positivity.
It's 11:11 right now as you said that.
Oh, really?
So I have to just put that in.
That's so cool. That's very
Scott
cool.
tells me this.
Oh, good. But yeah, so, I mean, even though this is your fight, and it's your fight representing really the needs of other people as well, they don't need to be there with you for it to very much benefit everything about their lives. They just have to draw from it when they want to.
Can you tell me more, as I don't understand?
So you mean about...
Like, how do they benefit, for example?
Okay. So I have to use myself as an example because I obviously don't know all your details. So when I would blog, I would always blog about 2 o'clock in the morning. Just naturally women who are at risk of losing their home, who maybe are living in their car, who are, escaping somebody, whatever it is. 2, 3 o'clock in the morning seems to be that space and time where they would be there. And so I would wake up and I would be on there. A lot of times, most of the time, nobody ever responded right away. I didn't know. I could see through statistical numbers that it was being read, and I had certain people in place all over the world that would shoot it out into more countries, so that my reach was really good. But I couldn't see any results ever. And, other than the odd woman that would come forward, really, it seemed like I was just putting myself out there for nothing and injecting all this positivity into, what it was like to be a woman, what it was like to be an at-risk woman, what it was, looking at always the good side of things and, different associations that I'd had to go up against, like welfare and, poverty groups that couldn't get concepts and government officials. They were all very polite to me. Then they would do nothing, and the frustration levels were just getting worse and worse. And so, the frustration of everything I was going through, like you going through all the legal parts of it, for me it was a very social part, and it was like there was nothing saying I was doing the right thing or helping anybody else. But I didn't stop until it got me down. And what I realized when he said, you don't know how many people count on you every single morning just for those words of positivity so they can get out of bed, so they can, they're never going to say thank you. They're never going to do any of these things, but people see things. And when you're searching, when you need something, you will go and you will find it eventually. You will find it. And the beauty of the internet is it's always going to be there. You can never get rid of it. And so even from stuff that I've written 10 years ago, I now see numbers are still going. People are still going and reading them. And so I had to kind of go, okay, I never needed the thank you. I just needed to know people are actually reading this stuff. And it's just like I hardly ever blog anymore, and the numbers are still multiplying all the time. So it is being read, it is happening. And that's all they need to know, is that somebody out there is going through stuff. It's never going to be the same, never going to be identical, just like different employees will have experienced different abuse than you, right? But to see somebody else going through it in a way that feels acceptable is very encouraging. And to know that somebody's done it, it means, ooh, maybe I could step up a little myself too. Maybe I could do a little bit of this and just take baby steps forward, right? So, there's going to be people who were fired or let go or still in the position you were in. And they're going to go, remember Samina with the tiny little voice? She did this. Right? And I don't have a huge voice either, which I thought was kind of neat. I thought, how's he going to do this microphone thing? But you don't have to have a huge voice. You have to have a huge will and the drive to do the right thing. And people see that. They can't not see it. And so everything that you're doing is so much benefiting everybody. And even if you can't see it, eventually they will see it, and it will just keep snowballing and snowballing. And the fact that you got case precedents now is even better.
Yeah. What does that mean? Sorry, the term?
So, if, like when I was writing case law for my husband, if we needed to prove a point, I would go to a judgment in court that had happened before and use that to help prove the point. To help that judge assist in making the same type of decision. So case precedence just means it's something similar has been decided before. So in your example, if somebody working there now is having similar issues and they can hear what you've what's happened with your court case, right, then they can apply it to what's happening with them.
Oh, that the fact that I won, so it
Yeah.
would have precedence over if someone else filed a claim.
Yeah. It just helps support other people's claims.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that, because sometimes, even till today I'm thinking, like, is anyone, like, if I did this, I don't know what you want to call it, social, everyone uses social justice, and I don't know the term. That's not even right for me right now, social justice, like I'm this big empowering person. I really am not. I'm just this one individual who's just a regular person, right? And that just really just wanted to stand up. I never knew it would go to this land. Just thought maybe she'll speak up to the board of directors because they didn't know that the law was being broken.
Right.
And then it went legal. They suspended me the next day. Instead of investigating the stuff I reported, start investigation on me. Right? So it's but I'm thinking, like, I won't give up, because this is also what it could mean for others who are going through this. And then sometimes you get discouraged, you think, well, is anyone listening anyways? How is a few words going to make a difference to them? How is it going to alter their direction? Right? So, yeah.
Yeah, but just the fact that you can talk about it today, you're very open about it, and that's good. It doesn't matter how small your voice is. And I've always said this, like, I kind of sounds stupid, but I nickname myself the stupid girl, right? So that I'm always remembering I'm just some girl, and I just believe in something so much, I can't stop. And that doesn't make my voice bigger. It doesn't anything, but it shows other people they can do that too, because the stupid girl did it, and that's not meant to be self-depreciating. That just reminds me of what I've done, what I've been through, how I got here. And, it doesn't make me powerful. In fact, I feel more humbled by it, that I could actually do these things.
So I feel humbled.
Yeah.
When someone says you're so brave and courageous, I don't know what to say. And just say, honestly, I couldn't have done it without Scott by my side. Taking it on for me, taking the whole thing on for me, writing the whole case for me.
Yeah.
Because I was just in trauma the whole time, right? But I'm just humbled.
Yeah. Having that, like I said to you, I had my kids that I had to fight for. And I remember I'd have like $20 gas in our van, and I wanted to show them more than the little country hamlet we lived in. And they were all little, and after I finished work, we would put little backpacks on with little water bottles, and had no money, but we would drive here to Toronto, and we'd be walking down Yonge Street 11 o'clock at night, city hiking or whatever, jump back in the van and go home, right? But we came here once. My dad had grown up around St. Mike's Cathedral, and it was a little while after he had passed away, and I wanted to go to St. Mike's. So we arrived really early, got our parking, and as we're walking into the church, this woman comes up, and obviously she's strung out on something. And, the kids are like, Mom. And I'm just like, don't worry about it. And so she comes up and she says, you have the most beautiful children. And I went, thank you. Like, I'm so proud of them. And she says, I have children. They aren't allowed to come near me because I'm a drug addict. And she said, someday I'm going to do it. And you could tell this had been her lifestyle for a very long time. She said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get them back. And then I get to walk around with my kids like you do. And, I had like maybe $2 in my purse, and that was like all our money. And so she says, I don't want to ask you. And I said, no, go ahead. I said, I was going to give it to the church anyway, so I might as well give it to you. And she had said a few more things, but then the kids pulled me aside and they were like, Mom, why'd you do that? Like she could have done anything. And, and obviously they did not grow up in an atmosphere where they would have ever met anybody like that before. And I said, well, here's the thing. I've been given choices since we've been on our own. I could have become a prostitute. We probably would have done better if I had. I could have turned to drugs or alcohol or any of these things, and I didn't. But I saw in her that if I had made different choices, I could have been just like her. And it could have been I could have lost you guys. And then I would have lost everything. And so all I wanted to do was just to look at her like with loving eyes, do anything I can for her, which is $2, and just make her feel human, make her feel okay for a second. They said, well, she's probably going to go like spend it on drugs or something. And I said, well, you don't know that. You can't make that decision for her. And so, these things that we do every single day, and the little tiny things like that was nothing to me. I mean, it meant a lot to me, but, it's an experience that'll stay with me forever, because we all have to make these huge choices to get where we need to go. And, you've made huge choices to get you where you are today. And you're going to look back and you're going to go, wow, that was hard, but wow, is it ever worth it? Like for her, it was only 5 minutes out of my life, but who knows what it meant to her, right?
Mm.
So, and I think we're given these choices and these experiences for a reason, so that we understand our own journey a little bit better.
Mm. Oh, this was a profound example. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
And Scott just ended the feed. I guess he always tries to end it when, if he finds it's a perfect spot, because there's no right or wrong spot to end it. We could go on and on, right? But he tries to, when he finds a spot, he likes to normally end it when our guests, like, you have completed a sentence or an idea, so it ends with you.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. So just so you know, so now we can basically, be freer and talk about anything, even though it was just about being real on 11/11. But you know what I mean, like just that even more loose, if you like. Yeah. But thank you. That was very meaningful. Like, I had no idea what we're gonna, and that's the whole purpose of it. No idea what we're gonna talk about, and it just comes out purely.